Hey, my name is Trent, and I will walk you through I support that claim. I support that claim is utilized to help students develop, utilize, and progress their abilities and skills in applying and summarizing information. And they do that by being asked to read, comprehend, summarize, and synthesize multiple sources. They're given a claim, and this claim connects those multiple sources. And then they're asked to pull evidence from the sources that either support or refute the claim. So the sources are connected together to the claim. They're also asked to work collaboratively and analyze the key supporting and refuting details within the sources. To prepare for the strategy, you first select the particular event or development to examine. In our case today, we will examine the Patriot Act, the passage of the Patriot Act post 9/11. Next, you will establish a claim that can be supported or refuted. And it's always best to choose a claim that will generate diverse conclusions, that will cause and generate debate within the student, within your class. The Patriot Act violates American citizens' constitutional rights and invades their privacy by allowing the government to spy on them without due process, search their homes without consent, and increase the risk of ordinary citizens being accused of crimes without just cause. That's our claim. The third step is to develop assignments and tasks for students within their groups. And that can be found here in your resource manual. So each student is given a task that they have to accomplish within their groups. That's on top of the individual work that they're asked to do. Next, students will develop a 1 to 2 paragraph secondary reading that overviews the event and the development. So for example, you just provide a brief overview of the topic. For our example, the Patriot Act, this goes into when it was passed, why it was passed, and what it included. So just provide a brief overview of the event. Finally, select multiple primary sources that support and refute the claim. Again, it's important to find sources that support and refute the claim, and that starts with choosing a topic that is controversial, that can generate diverse conclusions. So here are some examples of sources. We have an excerpt of Rand Paul's floor speech to Congress while it was being discussed to pass the Patriot Act. Next is a political cartoon from this time. Of course, this refutes. Next, we have a speech by President Bush as he was signing the Patriot Act that, of course, supports the passage of the act. And then finally, we have public opinion on the Patriot Act. So usually choose 4 to 6, maybe even more sources that support and refute the claim. Next, we have a public opinion on the Patriot Act that shows how the public felt about the passage of the act in 2002 and then in 2003. So again, you want to choose multiple sources that both support and refute the claim. This is the template that students will be using. Of course, you insert your claim at the top, and then the students are asked to identify the document that they're working with, what the information in the document says, economic, social, or political connections identified in the document, and then finally, students are asked to explain how this document supports or refutes the claim. And in this section, you can require students to include evidence to support their answers. So the procedure and process for this is first to explain the difference between primary and secondary sources. It's important for them to be able to recognize what is a primary source in comparison to a secondary source. Next, you'll distribute the sources and then you'll instruct them that they will be examining multiple primary source documents that are both textual and visual in nature, that contain multiple perspectives and viewpoints regarding the event. Distribute the template, divide the students up into groups, and then assign them their task. Finally, instruct them that they will review the multiple documents and provide evidence from the documents that support or refute the overarching claim. Provide the directions for successfully completing the template sections. Here is an example from one of my students. As a 7th grade teacher, we talk about NAFTA and its influence in Alabama, and we examine if it has contributed to significant economic growth in Alabama. And so we had various documents, as you can see over here. The student summarized what the document said. They identified it as an ES or P, and then finally they explained how that particular document supported or refuted the claim. Some tips for this is it's a rigorous activity and it requires time. So dedicate 2-3 days to this. It is very beneficial, but it requires a lot of time. So set aside more than 1 day to complete this task. I use the strategy to prepare for a Socratic seminar where students are asked to discuss a topic without the teacher involved, and they have to use evidence in their discussion. And so I use this as a tool to prepare for Socratic seminars. Choose sources that both support and refute the claim. That way students are reaching diverse conclusions. And that, of course, generates debate and generates diverse opinions and increases engagement. To differentiate the strategy for struggling students, you can provide more visual than textual examples. You can modify the documents for understanding as needed. You can limit the amount of documents that they're examining. You can model this in front of the entire class multiple times, and then you can debrief after each document. And instead of handing out multiple documents, maybe just hand out to each group the same document at a time. You give them a time limit. At the end of that limit, debrief and discuss that document and then move on to the next one. So you're doing the documents as a whole class rather than having multiple documents in each group. For advanced students, you can provide more textual than visual examples and have students develop their own claim based on their analysis of the documents. So now we are going to do an example. And if you remember, our topic was the Patriot Act. Our claim was that it violates American citizens' constitutional rights and invades their privacy. So I have 2 documents that we will work through. One is a political cartoon and the other is a speech by President Bush. One will support the claim and one will refute the claim. So this is the Patriot Act political cartoon. And as you can see, there's a crack in the Liberty Bell and it's labeled Patriot Act, suggesting that the Patriot Act is compromising our liberty. And then there are examples of why to the side: electric surveillance, domestic spying, warrantless wiretaps. So when filling out the template, we're just going to say that the cartoon suggests there is a compromise in our liberty. Examples include warrantless wiretapping, domestic spying, etc. How does this support refute the claim? It supports the claim by providing examples of the Patriot Act that violate our liberties. And that's just a brief example. Of course, your students are probably going to go in more detail than that. The next document is a speech by President Bush after he signed the Patriot Act. So in the information, we're just going to type in speech by Bush explaining the benefits of the Patriot Act. And then I pulled a quote from the speech, and it talks about warrants and how previously, before the Patriot Act, investigators, law enforcement agencies were required to get warrants for each new district. But with the Patriot Act, they now can use the same warrant for multiple districts in multiple states. So that is evidence from President Bush that a warrant is still required. However, it is easier to conduct searches with this new law because it allows wider jurisdiction. In review, I support that claim as a strategy that exposes multiple documents to students and asks them to pull supporting or refuting evidence from the documents that are connected to a claim, and then it asks them to reach a conclusion, to give their perspective, to give their opinion based on the multiple sources that they examined. It prepares them for the document-based questions that they will see on the AP exam, and it causes them to quickly synthesize and summarize information.